Welcome to Mind You the Forest, a podcast of the Louisiana Forestry Association. Hello, I'm your host, Jeff Zeringue. In Mind You the Forest, we talk about forestry and how important it is to have managed forests and the benefits they offer for wildlife and water protection. Those benefits are why the LFA promotes keeping Louisiana's almost 15 million acres of forests as forests. And the forest products industry, which includes forest landowners, loggers, and wood manufacturers such as lumber, paper, and pellet mills, they play an important role in the conservation and management of forest for the important renewable natural resource it is. This episode of Mind of the Forest is sponsored by First South Farm Credit. First South is your premier rural lender. With over 100 years financing timber and agriculture, they have the expertise you're looking for when financing rural property. If you're looking to purchase or refinance land, call your local First South Farm Credit office or find them online at firstsouthland.com. This is episode 53 of Mind of the Forest, and we're talking to Louisiana Forestry Association Executive Director Buck Vandersteen. Today, April 14th, starts a new session of the Louisiana Legislature, and Buck will spend the next 60 days watching what the public body does that could affect the forest products industry. Here's Buck Vandersteen.
The governor's address to the legislature, joint session of the legislature, will really set out his agenda for the session. This is a shortened session, 60 days. It's a fiscal session.
Okay.
There's been already over 640 bills introduced in the House and 240 or so in the Senate. So nearly 1,000 bills that will be looked at, addressed, talked about for the next 60 days. This session will be a big success if they can address the tax issues, certainly after the March 29th failure of the constitutional amendment that would change the tax code. Yeah. There'll be a lot of interest in that, as well as something that every person that drives an automobile or a truck in Louisiana wants: insurance reform. And if those two things get accomplished this session, it will be a huge success for this legislature, for the governor, and for all involved. If the legislature puts as much emphasis on tax reform and insurance reform as they do in bringing new industry and that to Louisiana, I'm very optimistic that we will see some things done. I do think, though, that the public's patience is wearing very thin. And this is not going to be one of those things that I think insurance will say, well, let's try and fix it and then wait for 3 years to see how it all plays out. Yeah. I think people want reform right now.
That's a difficult thing to do. Last year, there were several bills that passed, some of which got the governor's signature, some of which did not. And one that was vetoed, as far as the insurance commissioner was concerned, thought that was a good key component to this whole big complex thing of insurance reform. Just because bills can pass in the legislature doesn't necessarily mean it's going to cross the finish line in the governor's office. So there's another component there that is another hurdle, I guess, to get over.
And you are exactly right. And the key word that you mentioned there is complex. Insurance is very complex. And you've got the accidents occurring. That's each and every one of us being safe on the road. Then you've got judicial reform, medical reform. That needs to be part of it. And then really the third thing is the attorneys and the suits and the insurance companies and all. So it's a complex formula that has to be developed. But we've been talking about insurance reform for a number of years. And I recall a recent tax session where several legislators and the insurance commissioner were in attendance. It started at 6 o'clock. 200 people showed up for this. Wow. And at 9 o'clock, they were still talking their 2-minute or 3-minute presentation on, look, I can't afford my insurance anymore. And some of them even went to the extreme of saying, I'm not going to renew my insurance. I'm just going to go without insurance. And that is the last thing that we need.
Yeah, I think most of that, though, dealt with property insurance, did it not? I mean, we still
It was
have
a combination.
laws.
It was a combination of
Okay.
property and automobile.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah, we do still have laws in place that require, which is a mandate, that you have insurance. Although, as most humans are apt to do, they will try and find a way either around it or to make it look good, just in case they're stopped. But I think overall, it's probably a bit of underinsured as well. Do you think that's true?
And we are forced to pay for that because in our insurance now we are paying uninsured motor vehicles. So it's the people that are trying to do the right things that continue to see their premiums go up and up, and people that are escaping the law, not following the law. Are moving along and thinking that they're winning. Then they get into an accident. Lo and behold, it just gets very, very complicated. So we hope that the powers to be and the people knowledgeable in the subjects of insurance and property and truck and automobile will come to some resolution and make some changes happen sooner than later.
We know that from our personal vehicle getting insured and whatnot, but just to kind of drive the point home, this insurance issue is a huge, huge problem and a big cost to bear for our loggers, and that is how it negatively affects the forest products industry, right?
Absolutely. Loggers are a critical part of our supply chain in forestry. Without loggers, we couldn't get the wood from the forest land up to the mills. They have seen their truck insurance go up almost exponentially.
Wow.
What before used to be a $7,000 a year deal is now a $27,000 a year deal, and it's impossible. The repayment of that is just not in the works. The consumer doesn't want to pay more for the wood products that they get. Mm-hmm. The logger has to move the cost to someone, and unfortunately that cost oftentimes goes down to the landowner who is trying to raise a crop of trees to make sure that we have trees for our future, so that we attract more industry to Louisiana to utilize our resource and hire our people. Mm-hmm. So it is a complicated thing, but it's exciting to see the new mills that are coming to Louisiana.
Let's talk about that a little bit. We've had quite a few, Camphor down in the Ritter area. That was a brand new one that's come on a couple of years ago. And then Bienville now is online, which is a second venture with Tokel Industries from Canada and Hunt Forest Products in Louisiana. That's really good to see. And this Teal Jones, which is up in Plain Dealing, they look like they are getting ready to roll. They're doing some testing right now, I think.
Yes, and they've had some significant investment partners from Japan, I believe, that will help them in moving their project forward. So very encouraging. Also, we see a lot of growth in the biomass industries, and this would be a great boom to help replace some of the paper mills that have closed, and to utilize that small diameter first thinnings that are so important to get your forest to the next level of higher valued saw logs and ply logs. So it is very exciting, and the biomass industry is something that who would have ever thought that we would be using wood to transport us. From the ocean-going vessels that'll be using the methanol or the sustainable aviation fuel that will be produced in some of these plants for the airlines that fly all over the world. It is very exciting for the wood industry.
That is something that was unfortunate We are still in April, and April is the month that International Paper said that it was going to close the plant in Campty. That's a hit, especially for landowners as far as trying to get first thinnings done and pulpwood, a place for pulpwood to go. The biofuels that you mentioned are good, but the state does step in and give a hand to really the loss of jobs in the state. Crucial, especially because these are rural jobs, they're well-paying jobs, and it's sad to see them go away. Do you think the legislature is going to kind of step in and see what it can do to help in rural areas as far as bringing industry in?
I think the administration, from the governor to the secretaries of economic development and workforce investment, are all working to bring industry in. Louisiana has a great workforce training that is available to all employers coming in. I know that when the announcement of the paper mill in Campty was closing, there was efforts to reach out to the corporate ownership and saying, okay, you're not going to be using this facility for a paper mill anymore. Can we use this facility? Can we take over this area and put something else in that spot? Now, I'm not aware of what the result of that discussion has been, but I know here in the central Louisiana area, it was very successful to get the area released from the company that closed a paper mill, and now a company using biomass, wood for the production of hydrogen and methanol, will be there using that facility and using all the infrastructure that was in place. So some opportunities there, but a lot of it goes back to what the legislature can do. And the legislature can do insurance reform that will help in that supply of material, and also tax reform to make it attractive for people and industry to come to Louisiana and for people to stay in Louisiana.
Well, that's an interesting thing about the tax reform. If we can circle back to that, Mississippi just went ahead and nixed its income tax. So it's another state that has no tax on people's income. They still got the federal tax. That's not going to go away. But the state income tax in Mississippi is kind of going away. We've heard discussions about wanting Louisiana to go in that direction, and really that's come up several times. So it's come up again. It was part of this tax reform that they tried to cram everything into just a few weeks to rewrite the tax code in Louisiana as far as the Constitution, the state Constitution is concerned. And as you mentioned earlier, those amendments did not pass. So is there any speculation of, do you think that the legislature tried to push too much too soon? Is there a trust issue with the legislature and or the administration? Why do you think those things didn't pass?
Those are very, very good questions. If you recall, when the tax package passed, it was in a special session, a very shortened session, focused entirely on tax reform, really led by the governor saying we wanted to do this. So it might have gone too quickly. You know, when you read the proposal, it looked reasonable. You didn't hear much opposition to it until really after the election was over, and then you heard things of democracy prevails and all of this, which brings up a trust issue, and are we really focusing on the issue? And this proposal did not eliminate income tax in Louisiana.
Right.
It reduced income tax in Louisiana. Of course, taxes, you've got to balance it along the way. If you're reducing income tax, you have to raise revenue another way, and we see that when we go buy something each and every day. And there's an argument that is this
temporary
affecting
tax was made permanent and increased, as a matter of fact. So.
And are we disenfranchising or harming the people on the lower end of the economic scale? But the exemptions in there for basics, food, drugs, basic supplies, that was not changed. But your tax on services, if I buy a boat, if I buy a four-wheeler, if I buy all of that, I'm now paying a good bit of sales tax. But then that's a want, not a need. So that's a tough decision.
Yeah, they also added the sales tax to services. For example, the services that we normally use to send newsletters out to our members. There's tax on that now where there never was before. There's tax on other computer services that are subscription-based. And the same thing with streaming services and things of that nature. So people who have Netflix pay a little bit more now because they're paying taxes on it, where they didn't pay it again. So there is new money coming in, but the income tax has not yet changed. And it was supposed to also simplify that a little bit by going to more of a flat tax than all these different components of, well, if you have this and you do this and you can take that, you can get this taken off, you can take this exemption and on and so forth. It's just a regular flat tax, which simplified it a great deal. But we bring that back to the drawing board in this legislative session.
And it will start right away. Today, Monday, April 14th, is the start of the 60-day session. The governor will address both bodies in a joint session. And then on Tuesday, tax day, April 15th, they will begin talking about the next steps. And it is going to be very interesting. And again, with nearly 1,000, over 900 bills being introduced in 60 days. You just do that math. There's a lot of activity in each of those 60 days if all of that is going to happen. But all of it won't happen if the leadership there will focus on those things that are really, really important. And I think the public and I think everybody would really appreciate or call this session a success if tax reform is redone and we've got something solid that the voters will approve, and insurance reform somewhere and people see almost an immediate drop in their insurance rates.
Carbon is still a buzzword, I guess, in more and more industries, and in the forest products industry, for landowners, carbon storage, for I guess the whole industry, carbon sequestration. We've had those subjects, and we're going to have these subjects coming up on Mind of the Forest in this year, we hope. And so, do you expect to see anything carbon related in legislation coming up?
Carbon is interesting because we do it every day, 24 hours a day in our forests. Carbon is something that we grow and it's part of forestry. The issue that we often get hung up on is capturing that carbon from manufacturing facilities and storing it, getting it out of the atmosphere. Previous administrations, global warming, rise of temperature were very much of a concern of them. The current administration, not so much. Our forests are still growing. Our forests are still consuming and sequestering carbon. The tax incentive is still there. The tax incentive is still there for these industries to capture that carbon, which is an expensive process, and then inject it in the ground. And there's still issues remaining in who owns that material, who is how do local communities benefit from it, how do the landowners, how does the state benefit from it all? Is it safe? That's a really big issue. Is it safe? And I think we will find ways to make all of this happen. But again, we can do a lot to remove carbon from the atmosphere by planting more trees.
Well, that's the good solution that we certainly promote, and it is a good thing. So no expected legislation on carbon that you can see so far?
There are a couple of bills that deal with the what they call the pore space. This is 5,000 feet down in the Earth's crust, and who owns that, and how is that compensated for the landowner and all. That's
pretty complex just to figure out. I mean, you have the landowners that are the surface owners and aren't necessarily the mineral rights owners below the surface, and then the surface owners, as I understand it, and again, we're going to have a show coming up that's going to be more explanatory than what we can cover today. But the space between the rocks and stuff where the carbon could actually be stored is owned by the surface owner, as we understand. So there's a big, complex legal situation with how one could affect the other. So
exactly right, and
incredibly crazy.
The forest landowner that is interested in growing those trees on the surface, and what goes down and below that surface is a whole another ball game, and really an interesting thing and a challenge for landowners to be sure that they are sharing in that economic benefit, and that it is safe for their investment in forests, their families, and communities. So very, very important to do that. I hope that science prevails in this discussion and not emotion. And oftentimes emotion, we make bad decisions if we're just strictly based on emotion. So let's bring the science. Let's bring the people that know what's going on here, work this out, and make sure that it's beneficial to our owners of the property, the community, and the state.
So there are probably other bills that we just can't conceive right now. They're filed just to kind of get through them, just a summary of each.
We would put everybody to sleep going over 900 bills, but some deal with crime, some deal with drugs, some deal with retirement systems. I mean, there are a plethora of bills that come forward, and it will be an interesting, exciting session. Many of the high-profile pieces of legislation people will be able to see in their local news media, their streaming events, or if they use a newspaper, if they read a newspaper. But the forestry stuff generally gets overlooked. Fortunately, there's not always a lot of legislation directed at forestry, but when there is, one way that people can find out what's going on, and that is subscribing to our legislative report, to working with our extension offices, and getting involved with the local forestry associations as well as the Louisiana Forestry Association, and just keeping abreast of what is going on that could have a direct impact on forestry that the normal media does not cover.
So for our membership, the Louisiana Forestry Association, if they wish to keep on top of bills specific to forest products industry, they can send an email to lfa@laforestry.com and request to be put on the legislative newsletter that comes out. And there's no regular schedule for those to come out. It just comes out as bills that affect the industry or talked about or coming up, or decisions made on that. Is
that is correct. We don't want to overburden anyone's email box, but initially we would try and do something maybe once a week to people. But as the session moves on and those bills are either moving or not moving, those reports slow down. So we promise not to be overburdened to people. We want to hit the pieces of legislation that are most important to us, and give people a chance to be knowledgeable of what's happening, and then make that next step, and that is talking to their legislator, reaching out to their community and saying this is going to be good for us or bad for us, and let's work together to make the appropriate changes.
Buck Vandersteen, the Executive Director of the Louisiana Forestry Association. Again, if you want to receive the legislative updates, you can send us an email at lfa@laforestry.com, and we'll add you to the list. And when Buck gets a report together, it'll be sent out to you. Buck, thanks a lot for joining us.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening to Mind of the Forest. This episode was sponsored by First South Farm Credit. First South is your premier rural lender. With over 100 years financing timber and agriculture, they have the expertise you're looking for when financing rural property. If you're looking to purchase or refinance land, call your local First South Farm Credit office or find them online at firstsouthland.com. Don't forget, if you'd like to receive the LFA's legislative report, send us an email at lfa@laforestry.com and you'll be added to the list. You might receive an email request to verify that you want to receive the update, so be sure to be on the lookout for that. If you'd like to learn more about sustainable forestry, the Sustainable Forestry Initiative, the LFA and its programs, and how you can be part of an organization that supports landowners, loggers, and the forest products industry in Louisiana, check out our website at laforestry.com. You can send comments or suggestions to me by email at jzeringue@laforestry.com. That's jzeringue@laforestry.com. You can also check out the show notes for our contact information as well as the contact information of our guests in this episode. You can subscribe to Mind of the Forest by clicking on the subscribe button on your favorite podcast app. Be sure to tap the notification button as well so you'll know when a new episode drops each month. So we appreciate you doing that very much. And remember, at the Louisiana Forestry Association, we're Mind of the Forest for you.